Hi, and welcome to the second of the coursework videos. Today, I'm going to look at getting you started in terms of the key things to be thinking about. We'll start fairly generically and then move into looking at the one of the questions that we do. Right. So, the very first things you need to be thinking about is, first of all, do you have a basic understanding of the 100 years of history that you're looking at? Do you know about the country? Do you know about what changes, the context in which your question is going to be set? So this is something you won't necessarily write a huge amount directly about, but you will need to have that broader, wider, deeper understanding of the country that you're studying. So that's an important starting point. So, for example, the one that we're going to look at today is a question about anti-Semitism in Germany. So you would need to look at the context of the question, which is 1819 to 1945. You need to look at what happens in Germany generally in that period of time, types of government, things like that. So whatever time period that it is, whichever country it is, you need to start off by getting a good, solid underlying understanding. Because otherwise you're just going to end up with lots of random bits of information on your particular theme, but you won't really be able to hang it to anything. You're not going to be able to make any really solid judgments and conclusions if you don't really understand what else is going on. So the first bit is going to be about doing some research into that 100 years of a history on the whatever country or countries that you're looking at. The other bit that's really important as you move forward is you need to have a really kind of solid understanding of the central themes of your question, and then any other particular concepts you'd like to look at. And most likely concepts you're going to be looking at in coursework is going to be change over time. These are designed, or coursework questions are designed to cover 100 or so years. And so you are looking at something that is developing, changing, but also going to have aspects of continuity in it. So they're likely to be the concept you're looking at. The central themes, the one we're going to look at is on the themes of anti-Semitism and whether it's an anomaly. But with the other questions, you can have a whole kind of different range of central themes going on in there. You're going to need fairly early on to try and get your head around the historians that you're going to be looking at. So it's important that you speak to your teachers about that, which historians you're going to do. I'm going to look at a couple of examples later in the video. Also, make sure you Google them, you try and find out as much as you can about them, because some of the mark scheme asks you to look at the context in which they write and any limitations to their writing. So you almost, in a way, there's almost a desire to find some flaws in your historians. If you have the perfect historians, then in a way you're going to have a difficulty with a bit of the mark scheme in AO3. So this is, we're not really doing a huge amount of content in this, but what we're thinking about is, right, where do I need to be to make a good start to my coursework? Right, so as I said, we're going to do this by an example today. So this is an example of a piece of coursework, coursework title that we do. So in the context of 1819 to 1945, to what extent was anti-Semitism of the German people during the Nazi rule an anomaly? Now, if we think back to the three key bits we said early on, so you need to have a basic understanding of the 100 years. So a good starting point, if this was your question, is that you would go and find out about Germany during that time period. So it starts off with Germany as a collection of smaller states. Those states are united under following the expansion of Prussia, and they're united under the Kaiser in 1870. We then get what's referred to as the Kaiserreich in between 1870 and 1918. The Kaiser abdicates at the end of World War One. There is a new democracy then created in Germany known as Weimar Germany. So a lot of you might have studied this at GCSE. Weimar Germany then is this kind of an experiment in democracy, really, in Germany that survives from 1919 to 1933 until we get the rise of the Nazis and the Nazi dictatorship and the fascist regime under the Nazis, which is then in place 1933 to 1945. So this is a period of enormous change in Germany, and you will need to have a good understanding of that change to deal with the key concepts and ideas in this question. So you need to do some research into that. You need to find some stuff out about it. Again, we're going to follow this example through in this series of videos, and in coursework video 3, I will go and I will look at some of the stuff in terms of the underlying context. Again, this will not be the be-all and end-all of what you need to know, but it will give you a starting point from which you can then go on and do further research. Right, so if we move on to the kind of your central themes and concepts then. So obviously one of the central themes of this question is anti-Semitism. So this is the hatred and mistreatment of the Jewish people. I mean, sadly, it has a very long history. I mean, we can go all the way back to the Roman Empire and persecution of the Jewish population there. Caligula, who was a rather crazy Roman emperor, was renowned for his anti-Semitism, wanted to have a statue of himself built in the main temple, and also kind of derided and made fun of Jewish representatives who went to try and plead the case, attacking some of their religious practices, for example, the non-eating of pork. So we see anti-Semitism going all the way back to the Roman period. It has a strong tradition in Europe running through the medieval period, where we see the Jewish population blamed for a variety of disasters, very incorrectly, but this kind of shows that anti-Semitism exists. So a lot of the Jewish populations get blamed for the plague. They get blamed for fire in London. So we see all kinds of different formations of this. A lot of the anti-Semitism that runs through medieval and early modern Europe is based on religion, and the Jewish population targeted by the Christian population, as they are held responsible by some of the members of the Christian population for the crucifixion and other things like that. So there is a very long history of it. Anti-Semitism develops as we go into the kind of the modern era, and we see the developments of new types of anti-Semitism. We do some long-running ones. There's religious anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism linked with ideas of finance and money lending. But we see new forms of anti-Semitism being created, particularly around the ideas of racial theory, which develop in the 19th century. And it's these ideas really that the Nazis get hold of. They don't create that ideology; it already existed, and they just kind of make this. They'll take this to a real extreme. And obviously, the most horrendous example of anti-Semitism in world history is the Holocaust perpetrated by the Nazis in 1941 to 1945. When they attempted to essentially carry out the mass genocide of all Europe's Jews. So it is a kind of difficult topic. It is a potentially very upsetting topic, but I think it's an important one because we're looking at this this long-standing persecution, and we're trying to look at the to look at the lessons we can learn from this history and what we can take from it. And again, one of the big bits that comes out of Holocaust history is to by looking at the horror of the events in the past, is to make sure that they're never repeated. And that's kind of a key bit of this in terms of why this is a topic that is studied. I will do another video. My plan is to do video 4, which will look at a kind of a history of anti-Semitism in a bit more detail and give you some bits that you can again take and look into in more detail. Right, and so continuing with this idea of central themes and concepts. Now, the judgment you're going to be making is about the German people. Now, this adds a degree of difficulty to the question, really, because the German people are not all the same. There will be huge variations amongst the German population at any moment in time, and obviously we're looking at quite a long period of time. So giving a definitive answer about all German people across 100 odd years is unlikely. So you're going to have to be looking, and this is one of the things, the challenges of the course, one of the things you expect to do is you're looking at the nuances of it. So we're looking about making a judgment about them. So how do we do that? Now we suggest that We look at a number of themes on this. So we look at the kind of concrete things like laws and actions of government. Now, that doesn't necessarily tell us what the German people feel, because the German people are not the government. And as I've spoken about in previous slides, that we have different forms of government through Germany at different periods. So if a Weimar government is doing something, then it's as part of a democracy, then we can suggest, well, maybe if you look at the Weimar Constitution or something like that, then maybe it has some kind of connection or support from the German people. When you see things being done by the Nazis or by the Kaiser, then we've got either a kind of an authoritarian government or dictatorship, and therefore the acceptance of it by the German people is going to be less clear. So we will look at how or get you to look at how the German people reacted to these laws as well. We also need to see actions by the German people to try and judge their degree of anti-Semitism at different points in time. So that might be manifest through the media, through press and literature, and then not only the production of these things by German people, but also the degree to which they consume it. And we can look at that across the 100-year period. And then also examples of violence. So are the German people acting violently towards the Jews throughout this time period? Does it only happen in the Nazi period? And again, that will help us towards an answer to the question. Now, the big central bit on this is the idea of anomaly. So we need to try and get our heads around that. So an anomaly is something that is completely out of the ordinary, a complete change. So if the actions and beliefs of the German people towards the Jews change completely under the Nazis due to propaganda, due to fear of the regime, then we see an absolute anomaly. If we can trace back the anti-Semitism into previous years, and we go, well, this isn't a freak occurrence, this kind of, I can find the ideas going further back, I can see actions by German people going back, so then you might go, well, it's not a complete anomaly. Now, it might be an anomaly in some ways, but not in others. It might be an anomaly for certain groups and not for others. And that's all part of the research and the judgment and the analysis going into it. It does lead to other very important questions about the Holocaust, because if you start looking at the German culture and the German society on this, and you can kind of then start getting into some of the questions in terms of responsibility. And we also look at whether this is, and again, this is one of the importance in terms of understanding events from history, we look at whether is it reliant purely on the circumstances that happened at that time. So do we need to worry about if there's a repeat of those kind of circumstances, this kind of horror could happen again. So there are some really important historical questions coming out of this. So about responsibility, about circumstances, and how circumstances can lead to events. So again, it's a really interesting question, and one that we can really explore over upcoming months and kind of really get to grips with. So there will be more on this, kind of looking at all these different aspects. Now, one of the kind of key bits, and something I think is worth people looking at fairly early on, is to try and get an idea of some of the arguments that you'll be looking at, is to look at the historians. So again, if you're doing a different question to this, then you need to talk to your teachers and go, right, okay, so which historians should I look at? So these are some examples that we would use in this particular question. So we've got Christopher Browning, who is a renowned historian. He wrote this really significant book in 1992, Ordinary Men, Reserve Police Battalion 101. And in this, he studies this particular battalion. It's about 500 men. They are fairly unremarkable in terms of their background. They're largely kind of middle-aged. They're in kind of all around 40, 30, late 30s, early 40s, around that kind of age, or majority of them are. They're from fairly ordinary backgrounds. They do fairly ordinary jobs. They tend to not be Nazi Party members. They are not enthusiastic volunteers. These are men who aren't suitable for other forms of military service, and so they are put in this police battalion and they're sent off to the east. What is remarkable, in a very horrendous way, is what they end up doing. They end up carrying out mass shootings of Jewish men, women, and children. So we've got ordinary men doing extraordinary, horrendous things. Now, Browning argues that they do this with a combination of kind of compliance, obedience. They are told what to do by people in authority, and so they just do it. And then the other key aspect he argues about is that they're not wanting to seem weak or let their comrades down, and therefore they do it. So because if they don't do it, it's not going to stop it happening. Somebody else will do it, but they know it's a horrendous thing to do, so they want to put that burden on other people. Both sides of the argument are quite interesting. The compliance bit, Browning, if any of you do psychology, Browning uses the arguments of Milgram and Milgram's experiments, which are interesting, which look at this idea of compliance. And there was an experiment set up which Milgram looked at in the post-war years, where he got volunteers to come in, and if people who were actors, it wasn't a real kind of scenario, but the people who were brought in to do the experiment didn't realize it. So there was a subject in a room answering questions. If the subject got the question wrong, then this volunteer who'd come in to do the experiment would apply an ever-increasing electric shock to them. And Milgram's experiments showed that just by someone who appeared to be in a position of authority telling them to continue, but the majority of people applied really kind of high levels, really dangerous levels of electric shock to the actors, the other side, assuming, and they didn't know they were actors, they thought it was real. And Browning has used this to kind of go, well, look, compliance is a really important thing in kind of Holocaust history. This is what people were doing. They were following orders. This is a regime which is willing to mass kill people. So if people of an authority in that position tell you to do things, then you do them. And that's kind of one of the arguments that Browning's work is based on. As I said, Browning is a really renowned historian. He plays a really key role in the Irving versus Lipstadt trial. This is a really important trial for Holocaust history because David Irving is a Holocaust denier, and so the trial was to kind of disprove what he was showing, and it was all based around a libel case. I let you look at it in more detail, but you don't put as one of your key witnesses up a historian who doesn't have a huge gravitas and a huge amount of knowledge and evidence and support. So the fact that Browning was used to successfully defeat Irving in this case shows that he's somebody who holds a huge kind of weighting, and is a really kind of respected historian. He's written lots of different things on the Nazis and on the Holocaust. Right, so he's one historian you look at. Now, obviously, he's likely to argue that the actions are an anomaly because of the circumstances and the particular regime are in place. Another historian we look at kind of argues the opposite, and this is Daniel Goldhagen. His highly controversial book, Hitler's Willing Executioners, published in '96, was largely a response to Browning. Now, Goldhagen argues really complete opposite, that the German people willingly and enthusiastically carried out the mass genocide of the Jews in the Holocaust. He argues that anti-Semitism was ingrained in German culture and was there long, long before the Nazis came to power. And rather than forcing the German people to act, Hitler simply released their desire to murder the Jews. So it is a really controversial piece of history. And again, this would give an argument that the Holocaust was not an anomaly, but a culmination of developments in Germany leading to this point. Goldhagen's work has been heavily criticised. It's been some critics have argued it is subjective. He has been accused of being incredibly anti-German. There's been some pointing to kind of his background. His father's a Holocaust survivor. But having said that, Goldhagen's work has also received a great deal of awards and has been an international bestseller. So we've got two historians there who have got opposing views. And whichever question you are doing, it is a good idea to try and get historians who have really differing views on your topic. And that's quite a good fit we've got with these two. Right, thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and again, keep an eye out on this playlist. I'm going to keep building up and going through over the upcoming weeks and months, so you've got something to refer back to help you as you go through your coursework. Thank you for watching again.